Welcome to From Dorms to Desks, job hunting tips for those early in their careers, a podcast brought to you by College Recruiter job search site, which believes that every student and recent grad deserves a great career, and hosted by Work Defined. Join our AI co-hosts as they dive into tips, tricks, and insights that will help you land your next part-time, seasonal, internship, or entry-level job. Let's get your career started.
If you walked into a federal agency today, expecting that safe, sleepwalking 30-year career that your grandfather had, you would honestly be eaten alive by lunchtime.
Oh, absolutely. Eaten alive.
Right. I mean, the government pension hammock is completely dead. So, welcome to this deep dive, where we are looking through the lens of high-volume hiring to analyze what is basically the ultimate case study in mass recruitment and organizational redesign.
Yeah, we are talking about the 2026 United States federal government.
Exactly. And look, if you are a mid-level manager or an early career professional and you're weighing your options right now, you need to know that the safety net you were promised growing up did not survive the winter.
No, it really didn't. The foundational architecture of civil service employment has been, it's been fundamentally rewired from the ground up.
It's wild.
We are looking at a system that has totally transitioned from prioritizing extreme stability and risk mitigation to, demanding hyper-agility and actually thriving on high turnover.
Which is the exact opposite of what we usually think of when we think of government work. And to understand the mechanics of this massive shift, we are unpacking a really fascinating new piece of market analysis from College Recruiter.
Right. The one published on March 16th, 2026.
That's the one. It maps out the concrete pros and cons of working for the federal government under the current Trump administration's restructuring. But before we get into it, I need to put a big disclaimer right at the top.
Definitely necessary.
Because this article deals with some seriously massive governmental shifts and presidential policy alignment, we need to establish our ground rules for this deep dive. We're putting on our high-volume hiring hats here. We're looking strictly at the mechanics of these policies and the raw reality of the job market data. We are not here to take political sides or debate the administration's ideology.
Right. Our only goal is to act as your guides through the factual reality of what an applicant faces when they click Apply Today. We are completely impartial here.
Exactly. So, okay, let's unpack this. The data really dictates our whole conversation today.
It does. We're looking at recruitment metrics, retention incentives, HR law, all of it. And the most glaring data point dominating the landscape right now is what the article calls the Great Thaw.
The Great Thaw. I love that term.
It's very descriptive.
Right.
Because to understand the jobs being posted today, you really have to understand the massive void that was created over the last 18 months.
Yeah, let's talk about that void. The 2025 mass buyouts.
Oh man, the buyouts. Throughout 2025, agencies executed these incredibly aggressive workforce reduction mandates.
And they didn't just trim the edges, right?
No, not at all. They offered substantial buyout packages that were targeted really heavily at mid to late career civil servants.
Which is huge, because when you incentivize early retirement at that kind of scale, you don't just lose your headcount. You are completely hollowing out the institutional memory of these departments.
Exactly. You lose the people who know where all the bodies are buried, figuratively speaking. The government underwent this severe hiring freeze while the organizational charts were essentially erased and redrawn.
But now, here we are in the spring of 2026, and the freeze is finally lifting.
Yeah, the thaw is here.
If you look at the federal job boards right now, or if you just walk into any university career fair, the recruitment apparatus is suddenly running at full tilt.
They are desperate to backfill these critical infrastructure roles.
But the environment they are hiring into is completely alien compared to the legacy workforce. I mean, taking a federal job used to be like getting on a slow-moving, incredibly safe train.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. You get your ticket, you sit in your seat, the train moves at this very predictable, union-protected speed, and then 30 years later, you arrive safely at your pension.
And you didn't really have to steer.
Exactly. But reading the mechanics of this great thaw, the new federal workforce is more like jumping onto a moving motorcycle.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You have to balance yourself, you have to lean into the turns, and the institution is absolutely no longer absorbing the risk of the journey for you. So my question for you is, has the fundamental psychology of the civil servant just had to change overnight?
I mean, yes, completely. The erosion of that safe harbor mentality is, it's the defining psychological shift of the 2026 civil service.
Because the train tracks are gone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you ride the train, like you said, the tracks dictate the direction, and the steel frame protects you from the elements.
Right.
In a bureaucratic context, that steel frame was the layers of middle management, the rigorous adherence to standardized processes, and a culture that literally rewarded tenure over rapid innovation.
If you just stayed in your seat, you got promoted.
Exactly.
Oh.
But the administration viewed that exact structure as bloated and completely unresponsive. So by executing those buyouts and lifting the freeze under these new operating procedures, the burden of success and, honestly, the liability of failure shifts entirely onto the incoming employee.
You are steering the motorcycle now.
You steer the motorcycle, and if you crash, it's on you.
So if the slow train is decommissioned, you obviously can't use the old ticketing system to get on board.
Right, the old HR filters don't work for this new reality.
If the government is demanding a workforce capable of driving this high-stakes, high-speed machine, how does the new human resources apparatus evaluate who actually gets the keys?
Well, they had to completely dismantle the traditional credentialing filters.
Which brings us to the first major pro in the article.
Yes, what College Recruiter highlights as the skills-first revolution. This is driven by the 2026 Merit Hiring Plan.
Let's break that down because the old system was kind of a nightmare for tech talent.
It was awful. Historically, the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, relied heavily on academic degrees as a proxy for actual competence.
Right, your placement on the general schedule, the GS pay scale, was rigidly tied to your diploma.
Exactly. A master's degree automatically unlocked higher pay bands, completely regardless of your practical ability to execute the specific technical demands of a project.
Which makes no sense in tech. And the article points out that the 2026 plan officially severs that requirement.
Yes, completely cut.
Agencies are now aggressively prioritizing candidates who can actually write secure code, architect cloud databases, or run cyber threat models.
Because that's what they actually need on day one.
Exactly. They are utilizing these practical technical assessments right in the interview phase. Like, if you can pass the whiteboard test or the coding simulation, they literally do not care if you learn those skills in a 6-month intensive boot camp or just sitting in your basement reading forums.
Which is a profound mechanical change for high-volume hiring in the government.
It's massive.
I mean, think about previous decades. A brilliant 22-year-old self-taught programmer would be automatically disqualified by the USA JOG's automated screening algorithms simply because they lacked a 4-year computer science degree.
Yep, the resume builder would just filter them right out.
Or, best case scenario, they would be offered a GS5 entry-level position that paid a fraction of what they could make in the private sector.
Nobody's taking that deal.
Nobody. But under these new technical assessment protocols, that exact same applicant can leapfrog the bureaucratic ladder entirely. They can land directly in a GS11 or even a GS12 role based purely on demonstrated capability.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting to me. Doesn't this create just an explosive culture clash inside the agencies?
Oh, it's incredibly tense.
I mean, picture this. You are going to have a 24-year-old boot camp graduate walking in at a GS12 level, tasked with overhauling legacy systems, and they are sitting right next to a 55-year-old lifer who spent a decade earning a master's degree at night just to reach that exact same pay band.
Yeah, the cultural friction is immense. You have two totally different value systems colliding in the same cubicle.
How does management even handle that?
Honestly, it's messy, but from an operational standpoint, it was a necessary shock to the system. The government was fundamentally uncompetitive in the cyber and IT labor markets.
Because the private sector figured this out years ago.
Yeah.
Exactly. Google, Amazon, the big defense contractors, they abandoned strict degree requirements for technical roles a long time ago. They hire based on practical output.
Right.
The federal government was just bleeding top-tier technical talent because their HR protocols were trapped in the 20th century. Dropping the degree requirement democratizes the hiring process.
And it completely shifts the internal balance of power, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Power in these agencies used to be concentrated among those with elite educational pedigrees and decades of tenure.
The ivory tower folks.
Right. But now, influence is consolidating around the practitioners, the personnel who can actually keep the digital infrastructure operational when everything hits the fan.
But I'm looking at the numbers in this College Recruiter article, and honestly, I don't understand how this infrastructure actually stays operational right now.
Because of the staffing levels.
Yeah. Let's talk about this 4-to-1 attrition rule.
Yeah.
If I'm reading this data correctly, agencies are operating under a strict mandate where they are only authorized to hire 1 new employee for every 4 who depart. Yes, that is the literal math of the lean workforce model the administration has implemented.
That math seems physically impossible to sustain.
It's definitely extreme.
I mean, if a cybersecurity division loses 20 seasoned analysts to the 2025 buyouts, they are only bringing in 5 new people to replace them. The workload doesn't magically shrink by 75%. How do public services not completely collapse under that ratio?
Well, they don't collapse because the mandate forces ruthless triage.
Triage. Okay, explain that.
Under the old model, a federal department might juggle, say, 50 ongoing initiatives. And honestly, a lot of them were legacy projects or low priority research that just kind of carried over year after year.
Stuff that didn't really move the needle.
Right. But when you reduce the headcount by 75%, you have to stop doing everything except what the executive branch deems absolutely mission critical.
You just drop the other projects.
Exactly. The scope of the agency's function narrows dramatically, but the intensity of the work for the remaining staff just skyrockets.
It's wild. Managing the 2026 federal workload under a 4-to-1 ratio isn't just, doing more with less.
No, it's way beyond that corporate cliche.
It's like being an air traffic controller where they've fired 3 of your colleagues, they catch all the airspaces open, and you have to run all 4 radar screens by yourself.
That is a terrifying but very accurate analogy.
You aren't just working harder. You are actively deciding which projects land safely and which ones you simply have to let crash into the ocean.
And that triage responsibility is exactly why early career professionals are experiencing such rapid acceleration right now.
Because they are the ones manning the screens.
Yes. Think about the private sector. A new hire's impact is typically very constrained, right?
Oh, yeah. You're usually just fixing minor bugs for the first year.
Exactly. You might spend your first 12 months optimizing a minor feature on a larger app, or just helping a team incrementally increase quarterly efficiency margins by a fraction of a percent.
Very safe, very slow.
But in the current federal ecosystem, the vacuum of experienced personnel means those new hires are handed the controls immediately.
On day one.
On day one, you are stepping in as the primary lead on projects that dictate national infrastructure security, public health logistics, or massive multi-agency data migrations.
What's fascinating here is how much that actually appeals to Gen Z. Massive responsibility, sweeping national impact, and completely skipping the decade-long climb up the ladder.
It satisfies that desire for immediate, meaningful impact.
Totally. It appeals to a very specific kind of highly ambitious personality. But let's look at the financial reality of this, because passion doesn't pay the rent.
No, it doesn't.
A 24-year-old running 3 radar screens is taking on an incredible amount of stress. Are agencies essentially bribing people into burnout? Because I'm looking at the financial perks listed in the piece, and they look an awful lot like combat pay.
Honestly, combat pay is a very accurate way to frame their compensation strategy.
So they know how bad the stress is.
Oh, the agencies are highly aware of the attrition metrics and the resulting stress loads. They aren't blind to it.
Right.
And they also know they cannot compete dollar for dollar with top-tier Silicon Valley base salaries. A GS-11 salary is good, but it's not Netflix engineering money.
So how are they getting these foes in the door?
They are weaponizing specific federal benefits to target the most acute pain point of the incoming workforce, which is student debt.
Ah, the federal student loan repayment program. The article highlights this as the ultimate recruitment magnet right now.
It really is.
Yeah.
Agencies are aggressively leveraging it to fill these critical thaw vacancies.
Walk us through the actual numbers on that.
Sure. An agency can offer an employee up to $10,000 per year toward their federal student loans, capping out at $60,000 total.
Wow, 10 grand a year just wiped out.
Exactly. And when you integrate that loan forgiveness into the broader total compensation formula, the financial trajectory of a new hire changes completely.
Break that down for me. How does that math actually beat out a higher paying private sector gig? Like, let's say I have an offer from a tech firm in San Francisco.
Okay, consider that tech worker in a major private sector hub like SF. They might secure a really flashy base salary, maybe some restricted stock units.
Sounds great on paper.
Right. But that income is immediately diluted by exorbitant cost of living expenses. Rent is astronomical. Plus, they have high out-of-pocket healthcare premiums and the monthly drain of student loan payments, which they're paying with post-tax dollars.
Right, the taxes just eat away at that big salary.
Contrast that with a federal hire in a mid-tier cost of living market like, say, Kansas City or Raleigh.
Okay.
They receive a competitive GS-11 salary. But the government is paying down $10,000 of their debt annually, pre-tax effectively for them.
That's massive.
They're utilizing the thrift savings plan, the federal equivalent of a 401k, with an automatic 5% agency match right out of the gate.
Free money.
And they have access to heavily subsidized premium tier federal health care.
I'd like to introduce the Boom Band Showcase. My name is Jeff Taylor. I'm the host of the show. I'm the founder of Monster.com and Boom Band. This is a podcast about job seekers. They're struggling right now. The ghosted jobs, the black hole, everything is challenging. What we want to do is create real stories, get them talking about their superpowers, have you see what they're really like, because you're going to want to hire them. Give me a sign that you love your life.
So this applicant is simultaneously erasing negative equity, building retirement wealth, and keeping their day-to-day living costs totally manageable.
That is a wildly pragmatic strategy. You basically take the hit on the stress and the massive workload, but you financially bulletproof your 20s.
Exactly. It's a very calculated exchange of mental energy for rapid wealth stabilization.
But, and this is a massive but, this exchange relies entirely on you actually keeping the job.
Yes, it does.
And that brings us to, honestly, the most radioactive section of the college recruiter analysis. The concept of permanent federal status has been effectively dismantled.
Completely dismantled.
Let's dig into the at-will era.
This is the most profound legal and structural shift in the civil service since, honestly, the Pendleton Act of 1883.
Wait, really? Going back to 1883?
Yes. The implementation of the new schedule policy and career designations systematically strips due process protections from vast swaths of the mid to senior level workforce.
Okay, I want to make sure I really understand the mechanics of this because due process is a term that gets thrown around a lot in HR. But historically, what did that actually mean for a government employee?
Prior to these structural changes, once a federal employee successfully completed their initial probationary period, usually a year, they legally acquired what are called property rights to their job.
Property rights, like they owned the job.
Legally, yes. They could not be fired at will. If an agency wanted to remove them for poor performance or conduct, they had to navigate an incredibly complex, multi-layered apparatus that was heavily monitored by the Merit Systems Protection Board, the MSPB.
And that wasn't a quick process.
Oh, not at all. It required extensive documentation, mandated performance improvement plans that could last for months, and it allowed the employee multiple avenues for appeal.
Like actual legal appeal?
Yes, up to and including federal court. The system was intentionally designed to be incredibly cumbersome.
Cumbersome to insulate the workforce from political retaliation, right?
Exactly.
Like, so a new president couldn't just walk in and fire 1,000 climate scientists or tax auditors who were just doing the jobs Congress mandated them to do.
Precisely. The insulation prioritized continuity and legal compliance over speed. It kept the machinery running regardless of who was in the Oval Office.
But obviously the current administration sees it differently.
Very differently. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the current administration's philosophy views that insulation not as protection, but as a mechanism for bureaucratic obstruction.
Right.
If an executive directive is issued and the career civil servants drag their feet, citing process, precedent, or regulatory friction, the administration sees that as an unaccountable shadow government, essentially blocking the democratic mandate.
They view the slowness as active sabotage.
Exactly. So the new schedule designation solves this from their perspective by reclassifying these roles as at will. It ties their employment directly to their alignment with executive policy.
The article notes that if your work is deemed misaligned with presidential directives, you can be removed instantly, without the whole MSPB appeals process.
Instant termination, just like the private sector.
It turns a government agency into a Silicon Valley startup. You are only as valuable as your immediate execution of the CEO's latest pivot.
That's a perfect comparison.
I mean, if the administration changes direction on a Tuesday and you are still executing Monday's protocol on Wednesday, you aren't just behind schedule, you are misaligned and you are out.
It creates a hyper-reactive workforce. Institutional memory and long-term planning are completely sacrificed in favor of immediate, frictionless execution of the current administration's goals.
And this demand for absolute alignment isn't something they just evaluate once you've been on the job for 6 months.
Oh no, it starts way earlier than that.
According to the 2026 merit hiring plan detailed in the article, this filtering starts at the application phase. We really need to talk about the 4 essays.
The essays, yes. The introduction of a direct political alignment metric right into the standard application process.
It's wild to me.
This is where the tension between a neutral civil service and a responsive executive branch becomes highly visible to everyone applying.
So the plan requires all applicants for GS5 positions and above to submit 4 essays articulating their commitment to American ideals and presidential policy alignment.
That's right. 4 distinct essays.
If I'm looking at this purely from a talent acquisition perspective, isn't this a massive unforced error?
How do you mean?
Well, if I am a brilliant, highly sought-after data scientist, I am not writing a 4-page loyalty pledge to prove my commitment to efficiency goals. I'm just not doing it.
And because you have options.
Exactly. I'm going to take a job at a defense contractor or a tech firm where my technical skills are the only metric that matters. Doesn't this essay requirement filter out the exact high-tier independent talent the Skills First initiative is desperately trying to attract?
You've hit on the core paradox of the entire current recruitment strategy.
Right. It just seems contradictory.
It is. The government is opening the door wider by dropping degree requirements to get these tech folks, but they're simultaneously installing a highly subjective political filter right in the doorway.
It makes no sense for high-volume hiring.
From a pure HR perspective, this absolutely causes massive talent attrition. Highly skilled candidates, like you said, have options, and ideological litmus tests create immense friction in the application pipeline.
It just selects for sycophants. You aren't getting the best engineer. You are getting the engineer who is most willing to parrot the administration's talking points to get a job.
Well, the administration's counter-argument is rooted in this deep paranoia of obstruction.
Paranoia of the deep state stuff.
Essentially, yes. From their perspective, a brilliant data scientist who is fundamentally opposed to the administration's policy goals is actually worse than a moderately skilled data scientist who executes the goals enthusiastically.
Because the brilliant one might slow things down on purpose.
Exactly. The administration argues that a purely neutral civil service is just a myth. Everyone has biases. And if those biases run counter to the elected executive, the resulting internal friction slows down the machinery of government. So the essays are basically a blunt instrument designed to screen out potential bureaucratic resistance before it even enters the building.
So what does this all mean for you, the applicant? If you value a strictly apolitical workspace where your personal philosophy doesn't intersect with your technical output, government work in 2026 is structurally hostile to you now.
It is. The days of leaving your politics at the door are over.
You literally must be willing to put your name on documents affirming the current administration's specific policy directives just to secure an initial interview.
Functionally, yes. You have to actively demonstrate alignment. There is no hiding in the background anymore.
Okay, so let's follow the timeline for a candidate who actually decides to go through with this.
Sure, let's walk through it.
An applicant decides the financial package is worth it. They write the 4 essays. They bypass the degree requirement via a whiteboard technical assessment. They accept the at-will reality of the schedule designation, and they walk into the agency as a GS11 on day 1.
Okay, they're in the building.
What is the physical day-to-day reality of that job actually going to look like under this lean workload trap we talked about earlier?
The day-to-day reality is defined by an extended, rigorous probationary period operating under extreme resource constraints.
Because of that 4-to-1 attrition rule?
Yes. That rule ensures that the backlog of work is constantly overflowing. There is never a slow day.
Because you are actively manning 3 abandoned air traffic control screens.
Exactly. And because the government has removed the safety net of the MSPB appeals process we discussed, that probationary period is an absolute crucible.
You can't just coast.
No, you cannot afford to let projects fail. But simultaneously, you do not have the manpower to succeed on all fronts.
Which means you are working nights and weekends.
It forces early career hires into a state of chronic overwork.
Yeah.
The legendary concept of federal work-life balance, leaving the office at 4:30 p.m., with zero expectation of answering emails until the next morning, that has totally evaporated in these restructured departments.
Yeah, the article points out that to prove your mission-critical impact and survive that extended probation, you are forced to shoulder the heaviest lifts imaginable.
You have to prove your worth every single day.
You are navigating archaic federal software systems that haven't been updated in a decade, managing the inherited backlogs of retired legacy staff who took the buyouts, and trying to execute these rapid policy pivots.
All at the same time.
All while knowing that a single misstep or even just a perceived lack of alignment could result in immediate termination. That isn't a sustainable career path. That is a recipe for catastrophic burnout.
It really is.
Yeah.
And this raises an important question, perhaps the most important organizational question for the government moving forward. How long can an agency actually sustain critical operations on the pure adrenaline and burnout of its youngest employees?
Not very long, I'd imagine.
Right. You are importing highly skilled, heavily indebted tech talent, maximizing their output for 24 to 36 months, and relying entirely on the financial lure of student loan repayment to keep them tethered just long enough to execute immediate directives.
And once the loans are paid off, they're gone.
They bounce right back to the private sector.
Which perfectly frames the final verdict of the college recruiter piece. We have laid out the entire board here for you today.
We really have.
The massive immediate responsibility, the skills-first hiring, the $10,000 loan repayment, balanced against the at-will employment, the political loyalty essays, and that crushing 4-to-1 workload trap.
It's a lot to weigh.
When you synthesize all of this data, who is the 2026 civil service actually for?
The profile is incredibly narrow now. The article concludes that federal employment today is strictly for the high-risk, high-skill specialist.
If you are an IT architect, a cybersecurity analyst, or an engineer, and you want to completely bypass the traditional 10-year climb up the corporate ladder, this is your arena.
This is exactly where you should be looking.
You enter the government, you accept the extreme workload, you use the $10,000 annual loan forgiveness to wipe out your debt, you put lead architect on national infrastructure on your resume at age 25, and then you exit back to the private sector. It is literally a tour of duty.
The concept of a tour of duty perfectly encapsulates the new reality.
Right. You aren't staying.
No. You leverage the unique, chaotic opportunities of the Great Thaw, you build an elite portfolio under fire, and you leave before the chronic stress and the political volatility break you.
But if you aren't that person,
then the data strongly suggests avoiding this environment entirely.
Yeah, if you are a generalist seeking a quiet, predictable career path, or if you require an insulated workspace safe from the shifting winds of the executive branch, applying for a federal job right now is a total trap.
Do not apply.
The archetype of the public servant has completely mutated. You cannot enter the civil service today as an employee waiting for a pension to vest.
Those days are over.
So what does this all mean? It means you have to enter as a competitor. You have to be a shark. You have to be aggressive, ruthlessly pragmatic about your financial goals, and constantly vigilant about your alignment with shifting directives.
And honestly, the transient nature of the new workforce is a feature of the redesign. It's not a bug.
They want the high turnover.
Absolutely. The administration wants a constant influx of highly skilled, agile practitioners who execute directives rapidly and then leave, rather than a permanent class of bureaucrats who prioritize institutional preservation over action.
It is a totally new game, played on a tightrope without a net. Let's quickly recap the mechanics we've covered in this deep dive.
Sounds good.
We started with the massive hollowing out of the 2025 buyouts and the reality of the Great Thaw. We analyzed the shift from a slow train to a moving motorcycle, moving into the skills-first revolution that allows tech talent to bypass degree requirements entirely.
We explored the brutal arithmetic of the 4-to-1 attrition rule and the air traffic control triage it forces on all the new hires.
We broke down the financial strategy of weaponizing the $10,000 loan repayment and the TSP matches. And finally, we tackled the structural vulnerabilities. The dismantling of due process via the at-will schedule designations, the political filter of the 4 essays, and the inevitable burnout of the lean workload trap.
Navigating this landscape requires a brutally honest assessment of your own technical capabilities, your risk tolerance, and your financial timelines.
It really does. To you, the listener, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope that unpacking the mechanics of this College Recruiter article has equipped you to look past all the political noise and really understand the structural reality of the federal job market today.
If you're eyeing a government job this spring, you now know exactly what the machinery demands of you.
Exactly. But before we close, I know you had one final thought to leave everyone with.
I do. I want to leave you with one final, lingering question to mull over on your own.
Let's hear it.
We've established that the government has successfully transitioned from a lifelong career destination to a high-turnover, high-intensity tour of duty for tech specialists looking to build their resumes and eliminate debt.
Right.
If the average tenure of a critical infrastructure engineer drops from 20 years down to maybe 36 months, how will that rapid revolving door fundamentally change the continuity, the security, and the institutional memory of the entire country over the next decade?
Wow. That is the multi-trillion-dollar question right there. Something to really think about. Until next time.
This has been From Dorms to Desks, job hunting tips for those early in their careers. a podcast brought to you by College Recruiter job search site, which believes that every student and recent grad deserves a great career. Each episode, we dive into tips, tricks, and insights that will help you land your next part-time, seasonal, internship, or entry-level job. Subscribe to this podcast for free now, so you don't miss an episode, and visit www.collegerecruiter.com to find your next great job.